Ohio. Oh, brother. Hello. Thank you.
Get it? Troy, I'm an addict. I'm grateful to be here. It's been a pretty great trip. Grover got to my house Thursday night, and we went to a meeting together. And we got up Friday morning early and took off, and we rode our motorcycles with a couple other friends of ours that are actually sharing at another event over in Pennsylvania. We rode as far as we could with them, and then we split up, and we stayed in Pennsylvania last night and had a wonderful time, just me and Grover and Mick, and we went to the grocery store and bought these big, thick steaks. They were just wonderful. And Grover made a big salad, and we had some fried potatoes and a whole mess of shrimp, and we just ate until we couldn't move, and it was great. It was just real laid back. I fell asleep 2 or 3 times during the day, just kicking back on a piece of lawn furniture, and woke up with bugs flying in my mouth. It was great. Anyway, I'm grateful for the opportunity to come here, and I've had a great time so far. I don't profess to know a whole lot. I know my story. That's all I got to share is my own story. I can't tell you guys how to do it. I can't tell you how to stay clean. I can tell you what I did, and I did the same thing that a lot of people did before me. So I came here desperate and hopeless, and I didn't even know I was desperate and hopeless. I just needed a break. I just needed a minute to regroup. I just needed to kind of get my shit together, and then I could get back out there again. And what I found was a new way of life. I found something I wasn't even looking for. I didn't even know I was looking for it. But I grew up. I'm an only child, and I had everything that I needed. I had a whole lot of the things I wanted. My parents did not suffer from the disease of addiction. They were good parents. They loved me. They tucked me in bed every night, and they kissed me, and they told me they loved me, and they encouraged me to talk about my feelings and talk about what was going on. I never did that, but they encouraged me to do it. I had everything that would lead you to believe that I would grow up to be a well-balanced, well-adjusted, normal citizen, and and here I am in a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. So that's just kind of the way it worked. But like I said, I had a happy childhood, and I had parents that loved me, and my parents taught me morals. They taught me to be honest, to always tell the truth. My dad taught me to be a man of integrity, to look another man directly in the eye when you're talking to him, and you should have no reason not to be able to look him straight in the eye if you're living right. And they taught me all these things, and these things were important to me growing up. And then I started using, and I was probably just an addict waiting to happen, because I remember in school they were talking about, I got the same spiel Amy did about, pot will lead to heroin and all these different things. They told me I would take hallucinogens, and then I'd want to jump out a 30-story window thinking I could fly, and the whole thing just sounded delicious to me. I mean, I just couldn't wait to get started. And the first time I got high, I stole the pot that I smoked. I mean, we stole it from this guy, and I've never even done it before. I'm already a thief. And So we took this pot that we stole from my friend's brother, and we took it in the bathroom. Neither one of us had ever smoked it before. We got a piece of toilet paper. We sprinkled some pot in it. We folded it over, put a piece of Scotch tape on it, and fired it up. And it caught on fire. And I didn't get real high from that experience, but I knew that I'd broken the law, and it was exciting, and I liked that feel. I knew I was going to do it again, and I did. And, going through high school, I continued to use, and I continued to do some things right. I did some things right, and I started working in this little pizza place when I was 15 years old, and through my high school time, I worked at a couple different pizza places, and I liked it real well. And my dad, when I was 17, he said, "I need to talk to you." So we sat down, and he said, "Listen," he goes, "I've always dreamed about you going to college and being a doctor or a lawyer or one of those kinds of things." And he looked at me, and he says, "You're not going to do that, are you?" I said, "No, I'm not going to do it, Dad. I'm not a very good student, and I don't want to do that." And he says, "You like the pizza business, though?" I go, "Yeah, I love it." And he said, "Well, I've got a friend that has a pizza place for sale. Let's go take a look at it." And I said, "All right." And we went down. It was on a little street in Columbus called Parsons Avenue, and it's not the nicest part of town. But we went in there, and they had everything they needed. They had an oven and coolers and mixer and slicer and tables and all the stuff you need to make pizzas. And the guys that were running the place weren't very happy with it. They weren't making as much money as they thought they should make. And my dad said, "What do you think?" I said, "Well, yeah, let's do it." And my dad said, "All right." And he went out and got a second mortgage on his house, and we went in the pizza business together. So the plan was that my dad was going to help me with this business until I was about 21, and then he was going to turn it over to me, because by that time I should be, able to run a business. Now, that was the plan, and this is what was my vision. My vision was I was going to become the pizza czar, and I was going to have 200 stores nationwide, and I'm going to be filthy rich. I'm just going to be independently wealthy, and I'm going to have this big yacht, and I'm going to sail around the world on a yacht, and I'll have to have a crew because I really don't know anything about sailing, but that doesn't stop me. And we're just going to sail around, and there'll be lots of hot chicks on the yacht with me, and we'll have lots of drugs, and it'll just be great. I can't wait. And this all starts in this little bad neighborhood in the south end of Columbus on Parsons Avenue, and we got going pretty good. And my head was so big, my ego and pride was so out of balance. I was in high school running my own business, and I just thought I was all that. I thought I was all that in a bag of chips, and we got it going pretty good. We changed the recipes a little bit. We did a little advertising, hired some new people, and we're making money. Life is good, and I'd close that place up every night, and we'd stay around. Me and the employees would stay around and party, And when I was 18 years old, I moved out of the house, and I got my own apartment, and I got an apartment at this place called Greenbrier East. And it's not there anymore. They leveled the entire apartment complex. It was in Columbus. They referred to it as Uzi Alley. It was just a really bad place. There was shootings there regularly. The police were always in and out of there. Ambulances always in and out of there. And that's where I moved into because I didn't have any credit. And they said they'd rent me an apartment, and I didn't really care where it was. I just wanted to be out of my parents' house so I could party the way I wanted to. And so I moved in there, and we continued on in the pizza business, and it went pretty well. And a couple years later, we got a second store, and I could see my dream beginning to materialize with 2 stores, and I just continued to use, and it kept getting worse. And I don't really know at what point I walked over that magic line, or if there is a magic line, or whatever. But I got to that place where I couldn't stop. And I couldn't stop, and using was more important than anything else. Finding ways and means to get more, that was all I really cared about. And, so I started to deal. And, I thought of myself as a big-time dope dealer, but I really wasn't, I never had very much, and usually I used most of what I got. And but I went along, and I really didn't have any consequences until one Wednesday night. I was driving home from the shop. I made my bank deposit, dropped it off to night slot, and headed on my way up down the road to go to a place where all the up-and-coming, highly successful pizza czars would live at Greenbrier East, and I got pulled over, and I was pretty wasted, and they took me to jail for DUI and carrying a loaded firearm while intoxicated and driving on the sidewalk. And I called my dad. My dad came and got me out of jail. And we didn't really talk about it very much. He just got me out. And very next week on Wednesday night, exact same thing. Same place, same time, same tower. They got me again for my second DUI. And my dad hired an attorney. We went to court. I got a little slap on the wrist. One of them was dropped. The other one was reduced. No big deal. Now, see, what I knew was that if you are a highly successful, up-and-coming pizza czar like me, you're a little bit above everybody else, and you don't really have to follow the rules. And if you do get busted, no big deal. You get a lawyer, shell out some money, and everything's going to be cool. And so everything was cool until a Wednesday rolled around, and I got my third DUI, and 7 days later on Wednesday I got my fourth, and we went through the same thing again, and the time I was done, I had 6 DUIs, all of them on Wednesday, and so I quit driving on Wednesday. Because I knew that what they do, see, they have this special drunk driving force, and they have more cops on the street on Wednesday. I knew that, so I quit driving on Wednesday. The judge thought, maybe you should just quit driving altogether. And so I lost my license and just started to ride a bicycle, and I didn't care. I mean, it was okay. Just ride a bicycle. I still get around. I go wherever I need to go. Everything, I was always able to figure out some way that everything was okay. My wife calls this phenomenon decorating your bottom, and it was just denial. I just wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to stop. And I looked at life like a game of Monopoly, You roll the dice, sometimes you get free parking, sometimes you go to jail, I really never had any idea that, I could decide to do things in my life that would, alter the dice throw. But, that's just kind of the way I looked at it. But what ended up happening was I started to steal from the family business. Like I said, I was brought up with morals, and I didn't want to start stealing, but I just couldn't get enough money, and I had to cop. And one night I just... somebody came in to pick up their order. It was like $20, and I just hit no sale on the register. I put their $20 in, and that night when I did the cash report, I took their $20 out and had an extra $20 for myself. And I felt some guilt about that, and I didn't like the way that felt. But a day or two went by, and that kind of went away. I kind of forgot about it, so I took some more, and I just kept doing that. I just kept taking money, and then I was taking whole night deposits, but I always had a plan, all right, I'm going to take this night's deposit and I'm going to cop some dope, all right, and I'm going to cut it up into smaller portions and sell it, and I'll probably make $300 or $400 plus the deposit back, plus I'll have some free dope, right? So then I sell the TV just to try to get half the deposit money back, and it just never worked. But my dad noticed that the deposits were not all being made, and he confronted me, and this went on for a little while, and it was just it was just me doing what I had to do to keep using. I couldn't stop. I just couldn't stop. And I always had, every time I'd take that money, I always had some plan how I was going to get it back, and it was going to be different this time, but it just never got back. And he called me in the back room one night, and he said, listen, he goes, I want you to know something. He said, I went to get some help for myself. He said, it's pretty obvious that you can't stop doing what you're doing, so I had to get some help for me. And this counselor told me that if I continue to let you steal money, if I continue to let you do the things you're doing in this family and in this business, that I'm just helping you kill yourself. And I'm not going to help you kill yourself anymore. So I'm telling you right now, if I catch you stealing 50 cents out of this place, you're out. You're out of the family. You're out of the business. You're done. I'll wash my hands completely of you. And this was my dad, This was my Cub Scout leader. This was the man that I looked up to my entire life. And I'd put him in that position where he had to, he was going to have to cut me off. And it wasn't going to take long, because it wasn't an hour after that conversation. I had the fucking money, and I had the dope man on his way. And so when we talk about being powerless over our addiction, our lives are unmanageable, I know what that means, because that night I put everything that was important to me, my hopes and dreams of being the pizza czar, my family, my business, absolutely everything, and I traded it for one stinking shot of dope. I traded it all. I traded my whole life for one shot of dope. And because I couldn't stop. I could not stop. I could not stop. I couldn't just say, oh, I think I'll make a good choice today and not use. I'd say that, but 10 minutes later, I got the fucking dope man on the phone, And I couldn't stop. And I ended up taking all the money from both stores that weekend. And I called my dad on Monday morning, and I told him what I did. I wanted him to hear it from me. I didn't want him to call the bank and find out if the deposits were made, because I knew that's what he was going to do. And he said, Troy, don't do anything stupid. I said, I won't, Dad, and I just hung up the phone. And then I took the change that I just cleared out of the change drawer and took to the dope man's and got as much as I could get for that and a front. And there was the place I was staying. I didn't have my own place anymore. I was staying with this other guy, and I was just renting a room. And he had a cousin that would come over periodically, and she used the way I did, and we jumped in her car. She had a car, and we just took off. And we ended up at a place about 70 miles from Columbus. There's a little resort area called Apple Valley. My parents were building a house there. They were building their dream house. It's right on the lake. My mom and dad always liked to fish and boat and do all that stuff. And it was February, and so we were up in that neighborhood. And I told this girl, I said, hey, let's go see how this construction project is going. So we went over there. And I stood out in front of this house, and the outside of the structure was almost done. And my dad's dock and everything was behind me. I'm standing, the house faced the lake, and I'm standing out by the lake looking at it. And, my sponsor told me there comes a time in every man's life when God will reveal to him exactly who and what he is. And that's where it happened for me. I stood there and I looked at that house, and it was beautiful. And I looked at it, and it represented how hard my dad had worked. My dad worked 2 jobs for as long as I could remember. And it represented hard work and honesty and dedication and a whole bunch of things that I didn't have anything left of. And I looked at that house, and I knew I was never going to have anything, and I knew I was never going to be anybody, and I knew I was ever going to do anything. And I stood there, and I was as hopeless and as desperate as I've ever been. And I'd put an awful lot of shit in my arm that day, and it wasn't killing the pain anymore, and I just started to cry. And this girl put her arm around me, and she said, come on, let's get out of here. And we got in her car, and we took off. And we went back to the house where I was staying, where I was renting a room. And I walked in, and the dude I was living with comes to the door, and he goes, man, what the hell have you been doing? He goes, everybody's been calling here for you all day. Your dad's been here like 5 times. Can't have this shit, man. I'm trying to sell dope here. And I just said, I don't know, man. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. And I looked at my dad was standing at the door. And I went over and I let him in, and he just charged in at me. And he just threw his arms around me, and he hugged me, and he just held on to me. And he says, I love you, but you are killing yourself. I said, I know, Dad. I can't stop. And I said, I got to get some help. And I had said that to my dad a couple times previously, but I never really meant it. You know, but that one time I said to him, Dad, I got to get some help. I really meant it. I really wanted some help. And we talked for a few minutes, and he left and came back the next morning. And I got on the phone, and I dialed like 1-800-DOPE-FIEND or some number that I've got somewhere. I don't know what it was, but and they told me where there were some treatment centers. And I got clean in 1987 when they had a lot of inpatient treatment centers, and they weren't absolutely impossible to get into. And they gave me the names of a couple of them, and I called around, and I mean, I was ready to go right now. And nobody could get me in right now. And the best hope we had was this one place said that they could get me in for an interview in 3 days. And my dad said, look, he says, if you can come to my house and not bring any of that stuff with you, you can come and stay there, and I'll take you to this treatment center in 3 days. I said, all right, Dad, I'll do it. And I left all my shit there, and I just went with my dad. And I laid on his couch and shook and shivered and all the things that we do. And 3 days later, I got up, and I remember taking a shower. And I got out of the shower, and I went to shave, and I had a mustache then, and I was shaking so bad that I messed up my mustache when I was trying to shave, so I had to shave it off. And they took me to treatment, and I went in there, and I had this interview with this lady, and she asked if I had insurance, and I did have insurance. And we called the insurance carrier, and they said that they would cover treatment for alcoholism, but if there were any illegal substances in your system, then they wouldn't pay for it. So she says, Mr. Sear, do you have $2,500 you could put down on your stay here at Riverside? And my dad goes, lady, if you had $2,500, you wouldn't be here. And I ain't paying $2,500 for him either. So she said, hang on. And she left, and she came back in the room, and she put a wristband on me. And she goes, I'm going to get you in here if I got to take you through the emergency room. And I looked at my wristband, and it said that I had Dr. Pepper. My doctor was Dr. Pepper. And I'm like, great, my life is in crisis. I got Dr. Pepper. And as it turns out, he's probably one of the foremost addictionologists in the country. The guy is brilliant. I mean, he's got like a really big head that's just full of brains, but I have the utmost respect for him. If you'd see a picture, I'm not really lying. He's got a really big head. And so I went into treatment, and they put me in pajamas. You had to be in pajamas for 3 days, and they had an NA meeting downstairs that night, and I went down to that meeting, and I sat in that meeting. They said, does anybody have a topic? And I said, yeah, I don't know how I'm supposed to live with all the things I've done. I've done things I can't live with, I don't know how I'm supposed to go on. And there was a guy there at that meeting, his name was Michael. And Michael he was a real addict. And he was kind of one of the original cast of characters in Columbus that started NA. And he had like these glasses. They would look down like this. And he looked real squirrely, and he had hair that went all over the place. And he just looked like a criminal. And Michael said, your topic is beating yourself up with the past. And I said, okay. And they went around the room, and people shared about it. That particular meeting, they broke up into little small tables, and there was only like 6 or 8 people at a table, so everybody really had time to share. And he said, listen, he says, there's no two-way tickets. What's done is done. You can't go back and change any of that stuff. He says, the good news is all of us here are just like you. We've all done the same things that you've done. You haven't done anything that somebody else here hasn't done. Because there's a name for it, that means somebody else has done it. And one of those people is in this room. And he said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take all that guilt and shame you've got, and I want you to stick it on a shelf. And don't worry about it for right now. Because you'll deal with all that when you get to steps 8 and 9. But all you need to worry about right now is step 1. And not picking up today, which you ought to be able to do, because your ass is in treatment. And I looked at him, and like I said, he looked like a criminal, and I really identified with him. And he cussed a lot, and that bought him credibility in my book. I've been to so many counselors and different places, where people were educated. I've never had anybody that was an addict look at me and say that, Yeah, I'm an addict too. So what? Don't fucking use, And I'm like, but you don't understand. I robbed the family business. Big fucking deal. I blew up my family business. He's talking about building pipe bombs and stuff. And he was one of the old timers there. He was the guy. It was 1987. He had 6 years clean, and a couple of months later, I'm standing outside. I got this guy to be my sponsor. Michael found this guy to be my sponsor. And I'm standing outside this meeting hall. And my sponsor always talked with his hands. And he's talking to me. And he's telling me about spirituality. And it's not a religious program. It's a spiritual program. And he's going on and on about spirituality. And Michael comes walking up. And he's standing there. His hair going everywhere. And he's looking down at his glasses, And he goes, I'll tell you the most spiritual thing that happened for me. First time I got laid clean. And I could feel it. And my sponsor just looked at him and goes, Michael, get out of here. But I remembered that. And I don't remember anything my sponsor told me, but I couldn't wait to get laid, and it had been quite a while. All right, off track. But I found hope in that first meeting, And I looked around that room. I didn't talk a lot, but I looked around that room, especially when the meeting was over, and they got in a big group hug, and they said the prayer, and then I watched what they did. And there was like little clumps of people around the room, little groups of people that were talking about they were going to go to Frisch's after the meeting. They were going to go bowling after the meeting. They were going to go to a movie after the meeting. They were going to do things. And I thought, wow, these guys do things after the meeting. And I had no idea, and I had some hope. And I looked and I saw that they had a basic text, and the treatment center I was in didn't give us that book. They gave us a different book, and I really wanted that NA book, And I said, how much is that book? And they said, $8. And I didn't have any money. So I called my dad, and I told him, Dad, I need $10. And for a book. He says, Jesus Christ, all the money that they're going to charge you for that place, they won't give you a book? I'm like, well, they gave me a book, but it's not the one I want. Yeah, no shit. That's new fucking news. And so he brought me $10 so I could buy an $8 book. And I got it. And, I started going to meetings. I got out of there after 3 weeks, and I just kept going to meetings. They told me, the one thing I got out of treatment was, they said, there is nothing we can tell you here in treatment that's going to keep you clean if you don't go to meetings. You got to go to meetings, or you'll never make it. And I got a sponsor. My sponsor told me, he says, listen, I want you to call me every single day. I don't care if you want to call, or you think you ought to call, or you have any reason to call, or you have anything to say. I want you to pick up the phone and dial my number. Because the only thing that makes any difference in your life is what you do. Nobody cares what you think. Everything you think is wrong. Just know it. If you think it, it's wrong. And he said, so I want you to get in the habit of dialing the phone and calling me. He says, most of the time I won't be there anyway. Just leave a message on my machine. And so I did. And I go, hey, Bill, this is Troy. I'm just calling to check in. Bye. And I started doing it. I just did what he said. He said, go to a meeting every day. He said, call him every day. And I made a decision not to go back to work for the pizza business. I was just going to try to find something else to do. And so for not quite 3 months, I didn't work at all. All I did was go to meetings and work on and focus on my recovery. And my parents let me move back in with them. And I didn't have a driver's license, and I didn't have a car, and I was living 20 miles from the nearest meeting, and I made it to a meeting every day, and most days I made it to 2, you know. And my sponsor, I told him that. My sponsor said, how am I supposed to get to a meeting every day? I don't have a license, I don't have a car, I can't get around. He says, you got dope every day. I said, yeah, I remember I stole a car and drove to Dayton, Ohio to buy a pound of weed. He goes, don't steal a car to go to a meeting. But I made it to a meeting every day, and I just started doing what they said to do, and I started listening to my sponsor and doing what he said, and he shared his stuff with me, you know, and I listened to other people share, and I began to share, and I got a 30-day key tag, and I thought, you know, the freaking sky was going to part, and you know, God was going to come down Himself and just hand it to me, because it was such a miracle. I couldn't believe I had 30 days clean. 30 days. Wow. And I knew it was getting better. You know, I was still crazy inside, but I was staying clean even though I was crazy. And I just kept coming back. You know, I knew that my sponsor got me started on the steps, and I knew that I was powerless over my addiction, that my life was unmanageable because I couldn't stop using. You know, I just couldn't stop. And I knew that there must have been some power greater than myself that intervened, because I have in fact stopped using, and I could not stop. You know, I mean, looking back, I can't tell you what thing I did that made it possible for me to not use on my first day clean. I don't know what it was. I have to believe that it was a power greater than me that did that. And I had gotten on a prayer on my, I said a prayer on my dad's living room, and it was like, God, please help me, because I don't know what to do, you know. And He did, you know, a God that I didn't have any understanding of at all, gave me the power to not use that first day clean. You know, and you got to get clean before you can stay clean. And I went to meetings, and I could feel an energy in the room. I don't know what it was. It was just an energy. It was something that was helping everybody stay clean. It was there was something there. I could feel it. I don't know what it was. I didn't know what to call it. And that was my first concept of a higher power. And I just called it God because that's what you guys called it. So, I mean, I just stole the name God. And I, you know, my sponsor said, you know, you need to turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understand Him. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. I don't even understand. How do you turn your will and your life over to the care? None of the steps made any sense to me. Look at the steps. They didn't make any sense to me. I mean, they told me there was 12 steps. I'm like, great, I can find out what they are, get them done, get it together. Oh, look, humbly ask Him to remove our shortcomings. What the hell does that mean? You know? And I got to that third step, and He said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to get on your knees, and I want you to say that prayer right in the book. You know, just read that prayer right out of the book. Take my will in my life, guide me in my recovery, and show me how to live. I said, I don't know if I have enough faith to say that prayer. He says, I didn't ask you to have faith. I asked you to get on your knees and read. Can you do that? I said, all right. And I started doing it. And he said that, you know, he kept telling me the only thing to make any difference in your life is the action that you take. Nobody cares what you think. And so I started doing it, and I started saying that prayer. And a little while after that, I think at about 4 months clean, he said, I want you to start writing your inventory. And he kind of explained how to write your inventory. We didn't have the flat book then. And he said, I just want you to, you know, he kind of gave me the directions. He said, get started on that. So I brought it up as a topic at meetings for about 30 days, and but never picked up a pen. And but I called Bill every day, and he would always change his answering machine message every day. Hey, this is Bill. It's a great day to stay clean. Leave a message. Hey, this is Bill. Why don't you pick up a newcomer today and take him to a meeting? beep. One day I call and it's, hey, this is Bill. Troy, write your inventory. And I knew he sponsored a bunch of people, and everybody was going to know I wasn't working the steps. So I planned a Saturday. They say to write a little bit each day. Just write 15 minutes a day. I don't do it that way. I planned a place to be where I could have privacy, and I got some paper and a pen, and I got up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I said, God, whatever's supposed to come out on this paper, please let it come out. Let it be your will, not mine. And I just wrote at the top of the page, resentments. And I just started writing every resentment I could think. I thought of things I hadn't thought of in years, And I called Bill up. Bill, I'm writing about my resentments, and I'm getting really pissed off. I don't think this inventory thing's working very well for me. And he's like, just keep doing it. And I did that, and I couldn't think of any more resentments to write about, so I wrote fear, and I started writing about everything that I was afraid of. And that section was really long. And I wrote everything, because he said, after you say that prayer, once you think of it, you got to write it down. Don't decide if it needs to go. Just write it down. So I'm afraid of spiders, and I write about my fear of spiders. I wrote about things that didn't have anything to do with using drugs, and then I wrote about all my sexual misconduct, and I was very disappointed to find it was only half the size of my fear section, and I wrote a section called miscellaneous because it was stuff on there that I knew needed to go somewhere, but I didn't know where it went, so I just wrote it in that section. And I wrote until about 6 o'clock that night, and I called Bill up and I said, I can't think of anything else to write. He says, all right, you can do your fifth step with anybody you want. You can do it with a priest if that makes you feel comfortable, or you can get a professional or something, whatever you want to do. All right, I'll pick you up on Tuesday for your fifth step. And that's how he did me. He said, you can do it with anybody you want, but I'll pick you up Tuesday. You're doing it with me. He picked me up, and we just drove around there. Columbus has an outer belt that goes all the way around the city. It's Route 270, and we just drove around 270, and I did my fifth step. And I shared everything with him, I didn't leave anything out. My deepest, darkest secrets, I threw those out there. My things that were really insignificant, like I'm afraid of spiders, I threw that out there. It didn't make any difference. I threw it all out there. I put all the cards on the table because I wanted to stay clean. I was desperate to stay clean. I just wanted to stay clean. And I wanted to start feeling better on the inside because I was getting pretty crazy. And he shared some of his stuff with me, and I'm going to tell you what, he was a sick pup. My sponsor was a sick one. He needs to be here. But I left that thing, and I remember thinking, I didn't have any spiritual awakening super big or anything, but I knew that I truly wasn't alone. I'm just an addict, and there's a whole bunch of us that are just addicts. And if I just keep coming back, it'll all be all right, And started going to some events, and I went to this convention in Bowling Green, Kentucky. It was the first Kentucky Regional Convention, and I went down there and got there really, really late on Friday night at 2 o'clock in the morning, and the only meeting left there had a marathon meeting that went the entire weekend. And I went in the marathon meeting, and I just started listening to people share that I'd never seen before. And there was probably 10 or 20 people from Columbus that were there, and so there was a few people I knew, and I just stayed in the marathon meeting, And they had a bunch of workshops and stuff on Saturday. I didn't go to any of those meetings. I stayed in the marathon meeting because that was the only place I was comfortable, in a circle with a bunch of people sharing. I didn't feel comfortable in any of those things. And they had the speaker meeting that night. Greg Pierce was the main speaker. Slept right through it. Love to tell you, that I heard Greg Pierce at my first convention. I missed it all. Sleeping in the lobby. And we didn't have a room, so I was sleeping in the lobby. And then they had a dance. I woke up for the dance, and I went in there, and lights are flashing, pretty girls are running around, and I just froze. You know, I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to be in a social situation. The music made me want to get high. The flashing lights just kind of was freaking my eyes out. And pretty girls, I could not even begin to talk to them, even though I heard it was going to be a spiritual experience later, when in fact that happened. So I stayed in the dance for about 5 minutes, and I left, and I went back to the marathon meeting, and I just poured my guts out. I said, I just went in the dance, man. I'm 25 years old, and I can't function in a dance. I mean, I can't be comfortable. I don't know what to do. And people shared with me, they go, oh, yeah, that was me last year. I'm in the marathon meeting now waiting on you, you know, because I knew you were going to be here, because there's one every year, you know, and this is your year, evidently. And they told me it'll get better, you know, just keep going. And so I kept going to as many functions as we finished that convention. And, actually, Sunday morning, the guy that's my sponsor now was the speaker Sunday morning, and he stood up there and he shared his experience and he cried from the podium, and then he read "We Do Recover." It's the first time I ever heard it, and after going through that at the dance and then hearing that read, that we can't function either with or without drugs, we all face the same dilemma. What is there left to do? You know, and that's where I was. I couldn't function with drugs. I couldn't function without them, you know. I knew that I couldn't go back out and use, and it ain't working real fucking well here either. You know what I mean? I'm staying clean and I'm grateful and all that, but God, I can't even go in the dance for 5 minutes without panicking. And what is there left to do? Either goes on to the bitter ends as best we can, jails, institutions, or death, or find a new way to live, you know. And I had to find a new way to live. And I found one, you know. I just kept coming back. My sponsor told me just keep coming back till the miracle happens, you know. And I kept going to those dances, and I never would dance, you know. I finally got to where I could get in there and you know, I'd be there. But, you know, I wasn't going out on the dance floor. And I went back to the Kentuckiana Regional Convention, the second one. It was in Evansville, Indiana, and I walked in the dance there, and I felt a little better, you know. And I really wanted to get out there and dance. I just couldn't quite make myself do it. And this chick come up to me. She's just, God, she was so pretty. And she goes, "Will you dance with me?" And I was so full of lust, and so full of fear, and the lust won, you know. And I went out and danced with her. And I thought, you know, the lights, you know, the music didn't stop, and everybody didn't notice or anything, you know. And I had a great time. And so I kept going to those things, you know. And I went to it was actually a dance that there was a motorcycle club in Columbus was having. They're not together anymore, but they had these dances once a month, and a lot of people from the other fellowship would go there, and some of us would go there, and I went to this dance, and I walk up and I'm talking to this girl, and I had a couple years clean by this time, and I had a Harley, you know, so life's kind of getting together, you know, and I'm kind of cool. I'm walking in, and this girl's looking at me, so I walk over and talk to her, and then this crazy redhead comes up. And she like pushes right in between me and this other girl, and she goes, "Hey, my name's Leah. You want to dance?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So we go out and we dance. And then she goes, "Here, I want you to meet my sponsor." She takes me over and introduces me to her sponsor. It was kind of like meeting her mom. And you know, and I got her number. She says, "Here's my number. Call me." She already had it written down. She pulled it out of her pocket and she handed it to me. It said, "Leah, red hair, underlined, and the phone number." And I called her up and I asked her out. And you know, she said she would, and I went and picked her up. And 9 months later, we were married. And we're still married. And she's my soulmate, you know. And I love her more now than I did the day we got married. And that's a gift, you know. It's truly a gift. She drives me crazy sometimes, but I still love her, and we've built a life together, you know. We've had it pretty good, you know. The last couple of years have been a little rough. Not between her and I, just some other things, some stuff with our kids, and our finances aren't real good right now, and you know, but we're hanging in there and we're hanging together. But anyway, I want to get back to something else. That, you know, when I was in that first meeting, and that guy told me to take that guilt and shame and put it up on the shelf. You know, I'd deal with that in steps 8 and 9. So I got to step 8, and my sponsor told me to make that list. You know, make a list of all the people you had harmed, and he told me to write about each situation. You know, and I did that, and we sat down together and we examined that list, and that's the step where. I mean, step 8's really, it's not just a list, it's another inventory. And having the experience from writing my first 4th step inventory, when I got to that 8-step inventory, I'm able to see things a little bit better. I'm able to peel off a few more layers of the onion, and I'm able to really get down there and find motives. You know, and I can see where my self-seeking and my fear and my selfishness and my arrogance and my self-pity drove me to do things. You know, those are the things that drive me. Those are the defects in my character, my selfishness, my arrogance, my pride especially. My pride is just the worst, and fear, and those are the things that drive me. Those are the root causes that drive me to do things, and I don't have the power on my own to make that different. They're part of who I am. You know what I mean? I mean, I'd love to just say, God, please remove all self-pity and have it never come back. You know, that'd be great. But the best I can get is to say, God, please take away all my defects of character that stand in the way of serving you for today. Please let me do your will and not mine. You know? And then just for today, I will hope and pray that, you know, God might relieve enough of my selfishness, enough of my fear, enough of my self-pity, enough of my arrogance, that I might be able to do something in accordance with His will for that day, you know. But anyway, I kind of fell backwards there. Step 8, you know, I saw how those different things were affecting all my relationships, and Bill helped me make a list of who I was going to go to make my 9th step amends. And I had this whole list of old girlfriends, you know. And he just scratched all of those off. He goes, not happening. I'm like, why not? I really harmed those girls. I should go back and make amends. And he says, you just want to get laid. You're not going anywhere near those girls. And he says, if I'm wrong, they'll show up. And they haven't. So he says, here's what I want you to do. I want you to make amends to your parents. I want you to sit down with them and tell them, you know, what you're trying to do in the steps, that you're trying to make amends, that you're going to have to pay back some money, and you guys need to come up with an amount of money that is acceptable for them and acceptable for you, and then you're going to have to work to pay it off. And I said, all right. And I called my parents and I scheduled that appointment. And I sat down with my mom, and as soon as I started talking, my mom bursts into tears. And my dad gets a little teary-eyed, and now I'm crying. And you know, we agreed on an amount of money. You know, they said, my mom says, I don't care. I just want you to stay clean. I don't care about the money. I go, well, my sponsor said you would say that. But if you really want me to stay clean, you got to take my money. And so we picked an amount that was painful. And and I paid that back, you know. And but I'll tell you what, I left that day, and I left in a car that I was driving, and I had a driver's license in my pocket. And I started to drive home, and this overwhelming gratitude came on me, and I started to cry in the car, and I couldn't stop crying. And what happened was, I was free. I'm free from all that shit. All that shit up on the shelf, it came off. And I could see it on the shelf the whole time I was clean until I did my amends. And I had some more to make, but that first one was huge. And I don't have to look down anymore. I can look somebody in the eye. I don't have to look in the rearview mirror anymore. I don't have to be afraid of what anybody's saying about me. I'm free. I'm fucking free. You know? What a gift. What a gift. I'm free. It's a new way to live. Without all that guilt and shame. Without all that remorse. Without all that self-hatred. I hated who I was. I fucking hated who I was. I'm free of that. I'm free of all that desperation I ain't got to use today. I don't have to use, you know. And we got some pretty serious shit going on back in Columbus. But I ain't got to pick up, you know. The chips will fall wherever they may fall. But I ain't going to get loaded over it, you know. Just for today, I know that. And it's a gift. 2004, Valentine's Day, my mom died. And I was with her. There was a bunch of her friends, and my dad and I and my wife were in the room with her, and when she took her last breath. And I miss my mom, you know. I miss my mom. And I wouldn't have traded that experience for anything. There was something kind of spiritual about being there. It was sad. It was beyond sad, but at the same time, it's something kind of spiritual, you know. And 2 years later, my dad died, you know. And my dad had cancer. He died really painfully. My wife and I were taking care of him. Hospice was in. They were given we had enough drugs in that cabinet to get this whole room high for a week. Well, maybe not you guys, but, you know, for a day. And not one drop of that stuff went anywhere it wasn't supposed to be, you know. And when he finally died, we called the hospice people, and they came and took him away, and they did an inventory on all the drugs, and all the drugs were there. And I buried my dad. And I just want to call him. I just want to call him on the phone. Talk to him. So I do. I don't pick up a phone and talk to him, but I pray. And the particular brand of spirituality that I have allows me to talk to people. Because I believe that we're a spirit in a body, not a body with a spirit. And I believe that his spirit and my mom's spirit are still out there somewhere. And I can talk to them, you know. And I do. And sometimes I just know they hear me, you know. Anyway, I'm looking at the clock and I'm seeing that it's almost 6 o'clock, and one of the things my first sponsor told me was, so I don't care where you are in your story, when you see that the meeting's over, say something nice about the fellowship and sit down. So all I can tell you is the program works, you know. And if you've been here a while, you know that. And if you're new, I can't cheat you out your own experience. You know, you got to find out for yourself. Just keep coming back, because it does work, and we do find freedom. And all that insanity, that obsession to use. When I first got here, I thought that obsession would never leave, you know, and it did. And I thought some of those outside things, those outside problems I had, that I just thought I'd never work through those, and I did, you know. And you know, now I got the wreckage of my recovery to deal with, and it's all a gift anyway, you know. To be standing here clean in Queens, 23 years clean, it's a miracle. My friend Grover, and there's a bunch of people here that I really wanted to spend a lot of time with, and there's just too many of them. I can't sit down and talk an hour with each one of them, but it's been great, you know. That's all I got. Thanks for letting me share.